Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Jaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. Hare Krishna. So we were discussing yesterday, Bhishma Dev is speaking to the Pandavas and he is discussing what is the cause of their suffering. So we had a discussion on this topic and we discussed how ultimately in the life of devotees, whatever is happening is by the plan of the Lord, but it is very difficult to understand that plan of the Lord. So the theme is continuing in a few more verses. So we will now read the 19th verse and then we will further discuss. 19th verse. Asyanubhavam Bhagavan Vedaguhyatamam Shivaha Devarshi Narada Sakshat Bhagavan Kapilo Nrapa. O King, Lord Shiva, Narada, the sage amongst the demigods, and Kapila, the incarnation of Godhead, all know very confidentially about his glories through direct contacts. Please do the purport. Okay, just hold on, just to maintain no confusion. So we'll just go in line.
Hare Krishna. Pure devotees of the Lord are all bhavas, or persons who know the glories of the Lord in different transcendental loving services. As the Lord has innumerable expansions of his plenary, there are innumerable pure devotees of the Lord who are engaged in the exchange of service of different humors. Ordinarily, there are 12 great devotees of the Lord, namely Brahma, Narada, Shiva, Kumara, Kapila, Manu, Prahlad, Bhishma, Janak, Sukdev Goswami, Bali, Maharaj, and Yamraj. Bhishma Dev, although one of them, has mentioned only 3 important names of the 12 who know the glories of the Lord. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, one of the great acharyas in the modern age, explained that Anubhav, or the glory of the Lord, is first appreciated by the devotee in ecstasy, manifesting the symptoms of perspiring, trembling, weeping, bodily eruptions, etc., which are further enhanced by steady understanding of the glories of the Lord. Such different understandings of bhavas are exchanged between Yashoda and the Lord, binding the Lord by ropes. Glories of the Lord are exhibited in his being subordinated before his devotees, and that is another feature of the glories of the Lord. Shukdev Goswami and the Kumaras, although situated in the transcendental position, became converted by another feature of bhav and turned into pure devotees of the Lord. Tribulations imposed upon the devotees of the Lord constitute another exchange.
Tribulations imposed upon the devotees
by the Lord constitute another exchange of transcendental bhav between the Lord and the devotees. The Lord says, I put my devotee into difficulty, and thus the devotee becomes more purified in exchanging transcendental bhav with me. Placing the devotee into material troubles necessitates delivering him from the illusory material relations. The material relations are based on reciprocation of material enjoyment, which depends mainly on material resources. Therefore, when material resources are withdrawn by the Lord, the devotee is 100% attracted toward the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Thus the Lord snatches the fallen soul from the mire of material existence. Tribulation offered by the Lord to his devotees are different from the tribulation resulting from vicious action. All these glories of the Lord are especially known to the great Mahajanas like Brahma, Shiva, Narada, Kapila, Kumar, and Bhishma, as mentioned above, and one is able to grasp it by their grace.
So here Bhishma Dev is saying that these great devotees, he is talking about three of them: Shiva, Devarshi Narada, and Bhagavan Kapila. So saying such great devotees, they understand the glories of the Lord's reciprocation with his devotees. All this is understood by these great devotees. Otherwise, the subject matter is Veda Guhya Tamam. The subject matter is very confidential. How the Lord reciprocates with his devotees. Not so easy to understand. And that is what Bhishma Dev has told previously also, that the plan of the Lord is very difficult to understand, even for the greatest of the philosophers. So, all these, as Srila Prabhupada is quoting Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, that ultimately the Lord is exchanging various emotions, bhavas, with his devotees. So therefore, he is performing all these various pastimes, the Damodar Leela, he is becoming charioteer for his devotee Arjuna. All this is simply to exchange loving reciprocations with his devotees. So all these are the symptoms of love. So similarly, he is saying that tribulations imposed upon the devotees by the Lord constitute another exchange of transcendental bhava between the Lord and the devotees. So even the Lord putting the devotees into trouble is also a loving exchange between the Lord and his devotees. Okay. So, so therefore, as towards the end of the Bhagavad Prabhupada says, tribulations offered by the Lord to his devotees are different from the tribulations resulting from vicious action. Vicious action is sinful action. So, when one performs sinful activities, offenses, as a result of that, one gets suffering. But the sufferings in the life of a devotee are not like that. The sufferings in the life of a devotee are loving exchanges between the Lord and his devotees. Therefore, the subject matter is not so easy to understand. Guhyatamam, very, very confidential. So, just we'll read a part of Vishwanath Chakravarti's commentary. Please read.
These his devotees, who generate prema in him, the knower of the rasa, infers that there is intense prema in the Siddha and Sadhaka devotees. He then concludes that the Krishna is cause of difficulties for devotees. In order to increase their devotion to that level, Shiva, Narada and Kapila know this. One sees an increase in prema in Draupadi and others when their difficulties increase. Yasyaham anugrahami harishe tad dhanam shanai. Tato dhanam tyajanti asya swajana dukkhitam. If I especially fear someone, I gradually deprive him of his wealth. Then the relatives and the friends of such a poverty-stricken man abandon him. In this way, he suffers one distress after another. Bhagavatam 10:88-8. Thus, the difficulties the devotees experience are not prarabdha karmas, since they are given by the Lord alone, who wants to benefit the devotees. However, this is not an inclusive rule. Sometimes, the Lord encourages his devotees' bhakti without giving problems to him. Thus, it is said that no one knows the plan of the Lord. Shiva and Narada know that anubhavas are the symptoms in the Lord. Other foolish people do not know the anubhavas. Like Krishna allowing himself to be tied up. They explain it as some sort of fake display.
So this is basically what Prabhupada is also explaining in his purport. Okay, so anubhavas are basically ecstatic symptoms. So there is vibhava, anubhava, vyabhichari bhava, sattvika bhava, sthai bhava. So these are 5 different aspects of transcendental emotions, ecstatic emotions. So these are manifestations of prema, basically. So Vishwanath Thakur is explaining. So anubhavas are basically external symptoms, like perspiration, crying. All these are external symptoms, anubhavas. So he's explaining that one may see the anubhavas, the symptoms of ecstasy of loving relationship between the Lord and the devotees. One may see the symptoms. So just like Krishna is having a loving reciprocation with Mother Yashoda, and so therefore he is allowing himself to be bound by Mother Yashoda. That is an anubhava or a symptom, an external manifestation of prema. That is anubhava. But at the same time, he explains that one may be able to see the external manifestation of the prema, but why he is exactly doing that, the intention of the Lord behind that no one can understand. Therefore, guhyatamam. So similarly, when a devotee is being put into distress, then this is also a type of anubhava of the Lord. So it is a loving reciprocation between the Lord and his devotee. This is an external manifestation. But why exactly the Lord is doing that for that devotee, very difficult to know. Therefore it is guhyatamam. But in any case, the point remains that the difficulties the devotees experience are not prarabdha karmas, since they are given by the Lord alone, who wants to benefit the devotee. Okay, so that point is very clear. That it is not due to prarabdha karma, but it is directly given by the Lord. For what? For benefiting the devotee. This is the loving reciprocation of the Lord with his devotees. Yasyaham anugrihnami, the special mercy of the Lord on his devotees. So we just thought of revising a few points. So those who had done Nectar of Devotion with us, then we showed these slides that time. But since some devotees had asked some questions yesterday, so we thought of showing these other aspects also. Okay, fine. So this is Sridhar Swami's commentary on the Tatyanukampam verse. Please read.
The punishment for a sinful activity is designed to curtail the mentality that produced the activity. From Bhagavad Gita 18.66, we understand that a devotee no longer suffers the reactions of karma. Since a devotee may still maintain the remnants of his previous sinful mentality, the Lord removes the last vestiges of the enjoying spirit by giving his devotee punishments that may resemble sinful reactions. This suffering is not technically a karmic reaction. It's the Lord's special mercy for inducing his devotee to let go of the material world and return to God. Since a sincere devotee wants to go back to Godhead, he willingly accepts the Lord's merciful punishment and continues offering obeisances to the Lord with his heart, words, and body. Just as one cannot approach the sun without becoming fire, one cannot approach the supreme pure Lord Krishna without undergoing a rigid purificatory process. Just as the legitimate son has to simply remain alive to gain an inheritance from his father. One who simply remains alive in Krishna consciousness, following the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga, automatically becomes eligible to receive the mercy of the personality of Godhead and be promoted to the kingdom of God.
Okay, so here also it is being very clearly explained that basically what is the purpose of punishment? The purpose of the punishment is to curtail the sinful mentality which is the cause of a person performing a wrong activity. So to curtail or to rectify the wrong mentality, there is punishment. So punishment comes in the form of suffering. So suffering is meant to curtail or to rectify the person. Just like a person is put in jail. Why is he put in jail? To rectify the wrong mentality. So that is the same purpose why a person suffers. So, and so he's explaining, since a devotee may still maintain the remnants of his previous sinful mentality, the Lord removes the last vestiges of the enjoying mentality by giving his devotee punishments that may resemble sinful reactions. They appear to be like sinful reactions of an ordinary karmi, but it is not technically a karmic reaction. It is the Lord's special mercy for inducing his devotee to let go of the material world and return to Godhead. And then, since sincere devotee, so when the devotee is sincere, then he accepts this. Okay, this is punishment which the Lord is giving for rectifying my sinful mentality, for purifying me, so that I can go back to God. So then he accepts that punishment, and therefore he offers obeisance with Ridva Guru. And that is what, if one has that mentality and one continues devotional service with this mentality, one becomes eligible to be promoted to the kingdom of God. Okay. Now, commentary by Srila Prabhupada in Gajendra's prayers, this section. Please read.
The king of the elephants was so very eager to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead that when he saw the Lord coming in the sky, with great pain and in a feeble voice he offered respect to the Lord. A devotee does not consider a dangerous position to be dangerous, for in such a dangerous position he can fervently pray to the Lord in great ecstasy. Thus a devotee regards danger as a good opportunity. Tatte anukampam susmikshaman. When a devotee is in great danger, he sees that danger to be the great mercy of the Lord, because it is an opportunity to think of the Lord very seriously with undiverted attention. He does not accuse the Supreme Personality of God for having let his devotee fall into such a dangerous condition. Rather, he considers that dangerous condition to be due to his past misdeeds and takes it as an opportunity to pray to the Lord and offer thanks for having...
It's like we have a disease, we voluntarily go to the doctor, correct? To get treatment. So now, Krishna as the doctor is personally giving treatment, even without our asking. So we should thank him. Na? Even without our asking, he is giving treatment, and that too free of cost. Free of cost treatment. First class surgery. Of course, sometimes he does surgery without anesthesia also. But then whatever it is, ultimately it is for our benefit. So a devotee, if he understands that, then rather than cribbing, grumbling, he thanks the Lord. My dear Lord, thank you for purifying me. If that is the vision of the devotee, which is a fact, it's a fact. If we only have that perception, then in every situation one can be grateful to the Lord that the Lord is putting us in a situation exactly what is required for my purification. That is the consciousness of the devotee. Then, in every situation, he is grateful And when he is grateful in this way, then the Lord recognizes that quality, and therefore his salvation, his going back home, back to God, it is guaranteed. So this is Vishwanath Thakur's commentary on the Tattva verse. Please read.
A secondary unsought result of bhakti is happiness. The results of aparadas are suffering. Experiencing both of these results from this bhakti, Atmakritam Vipakas, the devotee sees this
Susamikshamaana.
Susamikshmana clearly for Sushti,
Sushtu.
and accurately sum for Samyak, as your mercy. He knows that the happiness and distress that he is experiencing stems from the Lord's mercy alone. It is just like a father who sometimes makes his son drink milk and sometimes bitter juice made from limba leaves. I do not know, but the Lord, like a father, knows what is good and bad for me. And thus sometimes he embraces and kisses me and sometimes slaps me. I, his devotee, have no power at all over karma and time. He alone by his mercy makes me experience happiness and distress and makes me serve him.
So Susamikshamaana, iksha means to see. So devotee clearly sees, he has a clear vision. He is never bewildered. The devotee has clear vision. So he clearly understands why this is happening in my life. So he very clearly sees that whether it is happiness or distress, both are arising from the Lord's mercy alone. So just like a loving father, sometimes you may embrace the child, sometimes you may slap the child. Both are for the benefit of the child. So that is the clear vision which a devotee has. Okay, this is from Prithu Maharaj's prayers. So this is essentially the important point here is he's praying that therefore please do not ask me to take some material benefit from you, but as a father, not waiting for the son's demand, does everything for the benefit of the son, please bestow upon me whatever you think is best for me. Okay, so you know what is best. You are like a loving father. So I do not know. You know what is best. So you give me whatever you think is best. So that's a nice prayer which is offering. I put this purport here because sometimes devotees ask, this reciprocation of the Lord with his devotees, when does it start? At what stage of devotional service? So Prabhupada is giving an answer to that question here. Please do.
This protection is offered to a devotee even from the very beginning of his devotional life service. Kaunteya prajitpati janehi name bhakta pranashyati. If one simply begins devotional service, he is immediately protected by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Aham tvam sarvapapebhyo moksheshyami. Protection begins immediately. The Lord is so kind and merciful that he gives the devotee proper guidance and all protection. And thus the devotee very peacefully makes solid progress in Krishna consciousness without outward disturbance.
So Prabhupada says the protection begins right from the very beginning of devotional service. So as soon as somebody begins devotional service, the reciprocation of the Lord begins. Okay?
Revealing himself daily to the Lord, offering respects with mind, words and body, passing his life while not being unduly tormented, the devotee becomes the rightful claimant of mukti or liberation from samsara and pada or service.
Okay, so that is the secondary effect. Mukti is the secondary effect. So the last line of the Tatyanukampam verse, what is that? Mukti pade sadaya bak. Okay, so there is this word mukti pade. So he's explaining that. So here he says mukti, that means liberation from sansar, is a secondary effect of the practice of devotional service. The primary effect is pade. That means the devotional service. That is what a devotee is more interested in. The devotee is more interested in serving the Lord, irrespective of where. That is what we find Mahaprabhu is praying. Janmani Janmanishwari. So therefore, where the devotee is not so much concerned, he is more concerned with serving the Lord. So therefore, the primary effect of the practice of devotional service is one gets an opportunity to serve. And mukti, deliverance from samsara, that is a secondary effect.
As remaining alive is the cause of a good son receiving his inheritance, so the devotee remaining alive in this world with steadiness on the path of bhakti is the cause of his receiving freedom from samsara and service to the Lord.
Yes. So we will just finish this section till verse number 24 and then we will take questions. Okay? Text 20. Yam manyase matuleyam priyam mitram suruttamam akaro sachimam dutam sauradha datasarathim. O king, that personality whom out of ignorance only you thought to be your maternal cousin, your very dear friend, well-wisher, counselor, messenger, benefactor, etc., is that very personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Okay, as Prabhupada writes, out of his causeless mercy and favor upon his unalloyed devotees, he performs all kinds of service, but that does not mean that he has changed his position as the absolute person. To think of him as an ordinary person is the grossest type of ignorance. So Bhishma Dev is telling the Pandavas that even though this personality, he performs so many services for you, but don't think he's an ordinary person. He is the Supreme Lord himself. And he has reciprocated with you in all these different ways only out of love. Therefore, even in the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna is commanding Krishna, 21st verse, correct? 20th and 21st verse. Yes, Ratham Stapayame Achyuta. So there he is addressing Krishna as Achyuta, meaning what? Infallible. Why he is addressing Krishna as Achyuta in that context? Yes, one meaning is he never fails to reciprocate with his devotee, but there's also another meaning why he's addressing him as Achyuta there. Yes, so he's addressing him as Achyuta there because he means to say that even though I am ordering you as a charioteer, but your position as the Supreme Lord always remains infallible. So it is not that because I am ordering you, your position has come down. No, your position always remains as the Supreme Lord. So therefore here also Bhishma Dev is telling that though he has performed so many services for you simply out of love, but still his position as Bhagavan always remains. Just a second, we'll just finish this section. Text 21. So, just a commentary on the 20th verse, please read.
This verse shows Krishna's anubhavas or actions performed out of deep love. Though Krishna is the Supreme Lord, he displays actions indicating that he is under your control by being your counselor and messenger. The verse is actually a continuation of the previous verse. No one knows the actions of Krishna whom you consider your cousin and friend.
So the same theme is continuing. That is, it is very difficult to understand the plan of the Lord, the actions of the Lord. That same theme is continuing. So he's saying that he is acting like an ordinary person. And so therefore so many people think him to be ordinary also. So therefore his actions are very difficult to understand. But then Bhishma Dev is saying, you don't be bewildered just because he's acting like your friend and messenger. You understand that he is still the Supreme Lord and his actions are all inconceivable, very difficult to understand. Text 21. Sarvatmana samadrisho hi advayasya anakritah tatkritam mati vaishamyam niravadyasya nakvachit. Being the absolute personality of God and he is present in everyone's heart, he is equally kind to everyone. and he is free from the false ego of differentiation. Therefore, whatever he does is free from material inebriety. He is equibalanced. So actually, he's continuing that same theme. Okay, please read this purport.
Because he is absolute, there is nothing different from him. He is Kaivalya, there is nothing except himself. Everything and everyone is the manifestation of his energy, and thus he is present everywhere by his energy, being non-different from it. The sun is identified with every inch of the sun rays and every molecular particle of the rays. Similarly, the Lord is distributed by his different energies. He is Paramatma or the Super Soul, present in everyone as the supreme guidance, and therefore he is already the chariot driver and counsel of all living beings. When he therefore exhibits himself as chariot driver of Arjuna, there is no change in his exalted position. It is the power of devotional service only that demonstrates him as the chariot driver or the messenger. Since he has nothing to do with the material conception of life, because he is absolute spiritual identity, there is for him no superior or inferior action. Being the absolute personality of Godhead, he has no false ego, and so he does not identify himself with anything different from him. The material conception of ego is equivalenced in him. He does not feel, therefore, inferior by becoming the chariot driver of his pure devotee. It is the glory of the pure devotee that only he can bring about service from the affectionate Lord.
So therefore, Bhishma Dev is explaining that the Lord has acted in all these different ways, not because he has some ahankar, not because he has some partiality, favoritism, bias. So it is not because of all these things that the Lord has acted in this way. Na ahankritaha. So it is not because of ahankar, anahankritaha. So he does not have any false ego, he doesn't misidentify with the body. So it is not because of these things that he has done all these actions. And so therefore, his activities are niravadyasya, free from all attachments. As Prabhupada in the translation he says, therefore whatever he does is free from material inebriety. There is no material fault in whatever he does, because whatever he does is based on the absolute platform. So therefore, whether he gives happiness, whether he gives suffering, whatever he does is simply meant for the benefit of the other person. It is not that he has some false ego, partiality, this, that. No, nothing of that sort. Whatever he does is on the absolute platform. So he does not feel therefore inferior by becoming the chariot driver of his pure devotee. So it is not that he feels that he has become inferior, he is doing some menial service. No, for him, the only thing that matters is prema. The only thing that matters is loving relationship with his devotee. And only out of that love, he is performing all these services. And so therefore, when the Lord gives punishment to the devotee, that is also out of prema. So that is what Bhishma Dev is trying to explain. Ultimately, whatever the Lord does are simply symptoms of prema towards his devotee. So whether he is performing all these services like messenger and chariot driver, that is also prema. And when he is giving suffering, that is also prema. So these are all very confidential subject matters, not so easy to understand. Now we can sit in the class and peacefully discuss. When the situation actually comes, then where is prema and what is prema, everything will be forgotten. But then we have to understand this philosophy so that we hope that we remember this philosophy, that when the situation actually comes, when the distressful situation actually comes, challenging situations actually come, that time if we remember or are reminded by someone about this philosophy, then we will not go into some depression crisis. Then we can understand that still whatever is happening, it is simply what? Prema of Krishna. It is simply the loving hand of Krishna for my own benefit. Okay, 22. तथाप्येकान्त भक्तेषु पश्य भूपानुकम्पितं यन्मे त्यजत साक्षात् कृष्णो दर्शनमागतः. Yet despite his being equally kind to everyone, okay, so that's what he said in the previous verse also. So in the previous verse also he said, Sarvatmana samadrisho. He is equal to everyone. There's no false ego, there's no partiality. Yet despite his being equally kind to everyone, he has graciously come before me while I am ending my life, for I am his unflinching servitor. So he is recognizing that actually I am not qualified. But still, out of his causeless mercy, he has agreed to come before me at this last stage of my life. So he's appreciating the kindness of the Lord. So here, so Srila Prabhupada writes, in the first paragraph, especially he is focusing on the 9th verse, 29th chapter, 9th chapter, 29th verse of the Bhagavad Gita. What is that? 9th chapter, 29th verse? Yes. Samoham sarvabhuteshu na medveshwasti na priya ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya mayi teteshu champyaham. So Krishna says, I'm equal to everyone. But anyone who reciprocates with me lovingly, then I also reciprocate accordingly. So that is what Prabhupada is explaining. Having unflinching faith in the Supreme Lord as one's protective friend and master is the natural condition of eternal life. A living entity is so made by the will of the Almighty that he is most happy when placing himself in a condition of absolute dependence. So the living entity is most happy when placing himself in a condition of absolute dependence. Therefore, many places the example is given that just like a small child, he is fully dependent on the mother. And because he is fully dependent on the mother, the child is peacefully sleeping. He has no anxiety. In some lectures, Prabhupada says that, so the child never asks his mother, so will you give me milk in the afternoon? So he never asks. He is confident that the mother will provide. He has absolutely no anxiety. So he's very peaceful. So that is how a devotee is supposed to be. So the devotee, when he has full faith that Krishna loves me in all circumstances, and whatever Krishna does is for my benefit. When the devotee has full faith in this fact, then the devotee can be free from all anxiety. And therefore he is most happy when placing himself in a condition of absolute dependence. So if we don't feel that dependence on Krishna, then what will happen? Then we will feel dependence on our own material arrangements. Then we will think, oh, I have to do this, ye karna padega, wo karna padega. So many things I have to do. Yes, we have to do our duties, no doubt. But then, usually the anxiety is due to what? Yes, the doership mentality, that's correct. So we have the doership mentality, and therefore we are in great anxiety about what? Yes, the results. We are very much attached to the results. What will the result be? We are very much attached to that. And therefore there is so much of anxiety, therefore there is so much of disturbance. Because one thinks result should be exactly what I want. That is what one thinks. One is very attached to the result. And therefore there is a lot of anxiety. But then one who has that full dependence on the Lord, and that is entire Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is speaking this only. Mai sarvani karmani sanyasyadhyatma chetasa nirashi nirmamo bhutva yudhyasva vigata jvara. Krishna is saying, Mai sarvani karmani, do all your activities for me. Sanyasyadhyatma chetasa means what? In a consciousness of renunciation. Sanyasyadhyatma chetasa. That means don't be attached to the fruits, renounce the fruits. Nirashi, nirmamo. Nirashi, nirasha. Don't have asha for fruits. And nirmama, give up the mentality that I am the doer, mamatva. But if somebody thinks, okay, fruits are not for me, no credit for my actions, I'll give up the work itself. Therefore Krishna says, no, not allowed. Yudhyasva vigata jvara. With full enthusiasm, giving up laziness, fight. You have to perform your duty with full enthusiasm, but give up the attachment to the fruits. Fruits for oneself. One can aspire to have fruits for Krishna, but not for oneself. So, when we have that full dependence on Krishna, that yes, Krishna is in control. Whatever results he wants to give, let him give. My duty is to perform my activities nicely. Whatever be the fruits, that I depend on Krishna. The opposite tendency is the cause of fall down. The living entity has this tendency of falling down by dint of misidentifying himself as fully independent to lord it over the material world. So when he thinks I'm independent to become the Lord and Master, then he falls down. The root cause of all troubles is there in false egotism. That is the root cause of all troubles. One must draw towards the Lord in all circumstances. So the appearance of Lord Krishna at the deathbed of Bhishma Ji is due to his being an unflinching devotee of the Lord. Arjuna had some bodily relation with Krishna because the Lord happened to be his maternal cousin. But Bhishma had no such bodily relation. Therefore, the cause of attraction was due to the intimate relation of the soul. Yet, because the relation of the body is very pleasing and natural, the Lord is more pleased when he is addressed as the son of Maharaj Nanda, the son of Yashoda, the lover of Radharani. This affinity by bodily relation with the Lord is another feature of reciprocating loving service with the Lord. Bhishma Dev is conscious of the sweetness of transcendental humor, and therefore he likes to address the Lord as Vijay Sakhe, Partha Sakhe, etc., exactly like Nanda Nandan or Yashoda Nandan. The best way to establish our relation in transcendental sweetness is to approach him through his recognized devotees. One should not try to establish the relation directly. There must be a via medium which is transparent and competent to lead us to the right path. 23. Bhaktya mano yasmin vachayan nama kirtayan tyajan kalevaram yogi mujjate kama karma bhi. The personality of Godhead who appears in the mind of the devotee by attentive devotion and meditation and by chanting of the holy name releases the devotee from the bondage of fruitive activities at the time of his quitting the material body. So, here Bhishma Dev is saying, Bhaktya Vesha Mano Yasmin Vachayan Nama Kirtayan. So, when one has the Avesha, Avesh. Avesh means one is totally absorbed. Krishna Avesh. So when with bhakti, bhaktya aveshya mana. So the mind is totally absorbed. Not only the mind, vacha, nama, kirtayan. So in this way, when one is absorbed in Krishna, then what happens? Prabhupada says, Krishna appears in the mind of the devotee. We cannot control Krishna. Krishna is Swaraj. But Krishna appears in the mind of the devotee when Krishna is pleased with the devotional service of the devotee. Therefore, Prabhupada writes in the purport, by such practice of yoga or linking up in the service of the Lord, one is recognized by the Lord Himself, as it is explained in Bhagavad Gita concerning the highest perfectional stage of Samadhi. The Lord calls such a rare devotee the best amongst the yogis. Such a perfect yogi is enabled by the divine grace of the Lord to concentrate his mind upon the Lord with a perfect sense of consciousness, and thus by chanting his holy name before quitting the body, the yogi is at once transferred by the internal energy of the Lord to one of the eternal planets where there is no question of material life and its concomitant factors. Okay? So here Prabhupada is saying that by the divine grace of the Lord, the yogi is able to concentrate his mind on the Lord. So it is only by the grace of the Lord that one can think of the Lord, and that's how one achieves perfection. Text 24. Sadeva Devo Bhagavan Pratishatam Kalevaram Yavadidam Hinomyaham Prasanna Saruna Lochano Lasan Mukham Bhujadhyana Pataschaturbujaha. May my Lord, who is four-handed and whose beautifully decorated lotus face, with eyes as red as the rising sun, is smiling, kindly await me at that moment when I quit this material body. So Bhishma Dev is expressing his desire, his aspiration, that the Lord with his beautiful smiling lotus face, be present before him when he is quitting his body. Okay, somebody can read this purport.
Vishwadev knew well that Lord Krishna is the original Narayan. His worshipable deity was four-handed Narayan. But he knew that four-handed Narayan is a plenary expansion of Lord Krishna. Indirectly, he desired Lord Sri Krishna to manifest himself in his four-handed feature of Narayan. A Vaishnava is always humble in his behavior. Although it was 100% certain that Vishwadev was approaching Vaikuntha Dham just after leaving his material body, still, as a humble Vaishnava, he desired to see the beautiful face of the Lord. For after quitting the present body, he might not be in a position to see the Lord anymore. The Vaishnava is not perfect, although the Lord guarantees his pure devotee entrance to his abode. Here Vishwadev says, as long as I do not quit his body, this means that the great general would quit the body by his own will. He was not being forced by the laws of nature. He was so powerful that he could stay in his body as long as he desired. He got his benediction from his father. He desired that the Lord stay before him in his four-handed Narayan feature, so that he might concentrate upon him and thus be in trance in that meditation. Then his mind might be sanctified with thinking of the Lord. Thus he did not mind wherever he might go. A pure devotee is never very anxious to go back home, back to Godhead, back to kingdom of God. He entirely depends on the good will of the Lord. He is equally satisfied even if the Lord desires that he go to hell. The only desire that pure devotee entertains is that he may always be in a rapt attention with thinking of the lotus feet of the Lord, regardless of where he is. Vishwadev wanted this much only, that his mind be absorbed in thinking of the Lord, and that he pass away thus. That is the highest ambition of a pure devotee.
Okay, so 2-3 points Prabhupada is mentioning here. One point is that Bhishma Dev, as a humble Vaishnav, he is desiring that the Lord be present before him because he does not know whether in the future he will still have his darshan. So Bhishma Dev is thinking, who knows? He's not thinking, I am a great Vaishnav, I will go back to Godhead, I'll have eternal darshan of the Lord. He's not thinking like that. So he's thinking, who knows? Maybe I'll never have darshan of the Lord again. So therefore, till the time I quit this body, let me have darshan of the Lord. And the other important point is that the devotee is never very anxious to go back to the kingdom of God. Yes, he desires, but he is not anxious because ultimately he is dependent on the desire of the Lord. Wherever the Lord wants him to go, the devotee is ready to go. But what is more important for the devotee? To be always serving the Lord, to be always in meditation on the lotus feet of the Lord. That is what the devotee is more concerned with. The place is immaterial because wherever one may be, if one is thinking about the lotus feet of the Lord, that is perfect. Okay, so this is this section. Okay, commentary on the 24th verse, please.
May he remain here until I, after some time, after taking the sweetness of his beauty with my eyes, after I praise him and reveal what is in my mind, give up my body. May he with 4 arms, who should at all times be the object of my meditation, since he is my object of worship, with this pleasing form and smile, remain directly in front of my eyes at the time of my passing from the body. Bhishma addressed him as a form with 4 arms because that was the form of Krishna mentioned in the mantra he used it during meditation.
Okay, so that was the mantra. We don't know what is that mantra, but he's mentioning that he chanted a mantra which indicated the 4-handed Narayan form, and so therefore he is also praying to see Krishna in his 4-handed Narayan form. Of course, he very well understands that in one sense there is no difference. Krishna is the source of all forms. Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam. He understands that, but still, because that was his constant meditation, so therefore he is desiring to see Krishna in his 4-hand. Any questions on this section?
So in the latter section we see Bhishma Dev is meditating on the path sadhana.
Yes, we'll come to that discussion later.
So in the previous discussion, when we say phala, so as a humble devotee, when the trouble comes to us in the form of as a humility, it is coming because of my past karma. Where is the point that we see it is a mercy of Krishna, it is a plan of Krishna that he is involving us in his plan, giving troubles.
So what's the question?
We as a humble devotees, we see it is because of my past karma I am experiencing this karma.
Correct, that's correct.
So then where is a point that we see Krishna's plan here? Only it is in the correction of other devotees that it is a Krishna's plan that devotee is going through.
See, either ways, if I am going through some suffering, then as Brahmaji is praying, Atma Kritam Vipakam. So I need to think that this is due to my own past mistakes. So it may not be so appropriate for me to think that I am such a great devotee that actually my suffering is not due to past mistakes, but special leela is going on with the Lord. So it may not be so appropriate for me to think like that when I am going through some suffering. Definitely, at the same time, I can definitely think that Krishna wants to purify me of my sinful mentality. That I can definitely think, because that's a fact. That is what Krishna actually wants me to give up, the sinful mentality. But at the same time, when I see other devotees going through some suffering, then definitely I have to see that from the perspective of Krishna's reciprocation with them. So when I see other devotees suffering, then I need not think that, okay, they're getting purified of some sinful mentality. Well, I can simply think that, well, Krishna has some reciprocation with them. I cannot understand, but Krishna's reciprocation.
Here in the conversation between Yudhishthira Maharaj and Bhishma, he is telling quite reverse thing, that I am able to see Anubhava of the Lord.
Yes.
But you are seeing Krishna as a friend or a cousin.
Yes, because the Pandavas are pure devotees, and so as far as Pandavas are concerned, definitely it is only Krishna's relationship, reciprocation with his devotees. That is why he has put them into suffering condition. So that is perfect.
Bhishma Pitamaha is saying to Pandavas that you are ignorantly you are thinking Krishna to be your friend, but I am able to see the Anubhava of the Lord. So when it comes to our thing, we should see ourselves of our past karma. When it comes to other devotees, it's the Leela of the Lord.
Yes, we can think that it is some reciprocation which the Lord is having with his devotees. That is what Bhishma Dev is also telling them. So Bhishma Dev is telling them that you are, so because Yudhishthira Maharaj was lamenting for what has happened. So therefore Bhishma Dev is trying to pacify them and telling them that don't think that you are responsible for all this. Ultimately it is Kala, and ultimately it is the plan of the Lord due to which all this has happened. So you need not lament for all that what has happened. It is ultimately the plan of the Lord.
So reverse should be practiced in our personal life.
No, in this case also, this is not being told by the Pandavas. Bhishma Dev is telling. Bhishma Dev is telling them, the Pandavas. So similarly, when we see other devotees going through some suffering, then we should think like that. That this is the Lord's reciprocation with them. But when I am going through some suffering, then I have to think Atma Kritam. It is only my past misdeeds as a result of which I am going through this. And the Lord wants to purify me of the sinful mentality. Anything else? Okay, Nima.
Hare Krishna. Really in the 20th verse commentaries that Krishna gives that to purify the sinful mentality, that is the base of sufferings given, punishment given by Krishna. So then if some devotee practices very staunchly, very seriously, so I remember hearing one two times here and there that if we put all that hard work, that suffering which we have to go through later, we put all that hard work now in our sadhana bhakti, then we can evade that sufferings. So is it right and happens like that, can happen like that, or no, that suffering will come, but Krishna will parallelly give you protection, that your faith will not be shaken.
Okay. So, as we are studying this section, and as Bhishma Dev is saying, what is exactly the plan of the Lord is very difficult to understand in the first place. So, it is not that, okay, I'll perform my bhakti very seriously, then all my sinful reactions will be eradicated, then there will be no more suffering. It doesn't work that way. Then what about the Pandavas? That is what we are studying, right? The Pandavas didn't have any prarabdha karma, yet they went through so much of suffering. Why? We saw that commentary. It is only to increase the prema. The pure devotees also go through suffering simply to increase the prema. Just like the Brajvasis, when they saw Krishna in the coils of Kaliya, apparently there is so much of suffering, correct? Mother Yashoda is fainting, the other Brajvasis are fainting, There's so much of intense emotions we read. Apparently it appears to be suffering, correct? But what was the purpose? To increase the prema. So therefore, how Krishna is acting is something which is very inconceivable for us to understand. So we cannot say, so the first point to understand is that simply thinking that I want to get free from suffering, I want to be free from anxiety is a very selfish desire. So this is the mentality of the Jnanis. The Jnanis, what they want to achieve? Liberation. Liberation means free from suffering. Freedom from suffering. That is what they want to achieve. But what is said, that is a selfish desire. Correct? Bhukti, Mukti, Siddhi, Kami. So they are Kami. There is a selfish desire. So a devotee never thinks, I want to be free from suffering. I want to be free from anxiety. And therefore I'll perform devotional service. If one is performing devotional service with that motive, then what is that? What is that? Jnana Mishra Bhakti. That is the contamination of Jnana within the practice of Bhakti. So it is the mentality of the Jnanis to simply become free from suffering. Did Mother Yashoda ever become free from anxiety? So much of anxiety. Of course, it was anxiety for Krishna, but still so much of anxiety. How much anxiety Srila Prabhupada went through to start the society and maintain the society? How much anxiety? So devotee is not simply trying to be free from suffering or free from anxiety. That is not the motive of the devotee. And so, if a devotee is practicing devotional service with this motive, then Krishna, out of his cause, mercy, may do something totally opposite. Yes. So therefore, if a devotee thinks, oh, I've been practicing devotional services so many years, I should not have any problems now. That is what we are trying to understand here. You can never understand what is the plan of the Lord, why the Lord is acting in certain ways. It is not simply some mathematical formula, or as sometimes the Westerners say, it is not rocket science. It's not something which follows some fixed formulas. I do this, I get this. I do this, I get this. It doesn't work that way. Krishna is Swarat, and how he reciprocates with his devotees and how he acts with his devotees is totally beyond our conception. That is what Bhishma Dev is saying. Even the greatest of philosophers cannot understand, and what we can understand. Got the point? Okay.
Guruji, you were mentioning that it is not devotee's karma, it is Krishna out of love is sending that. But if, of course, typical question, if a devotee doesn't have karma, then how will Krishna release any of that? So then it means it is karma of devotee only. Now it is controlled and used by Krishna for the devotee's ultimate goal. Am I understanding correctly?
No, but even if there is no karma, it is not that Krishna is not under the control of karma, correct? So it is not that the devotee's karma is the cause of his suffering. But Krishna can give suffering to the devotee even though he may not have karma. What is restricting Krishna from not doing it? Just like the Pandavas. There is no prarabdha karma there. Yet they went through so much suffering. How do we understand? By Krishna's will, it happens. Anything can happen.
So I understand that why we are saying it is Krishna's love or Krishna's controller, because the devotee's karma is not the deciding factor of suffering. deciding the boss or deciding that is Krishna. That is why
Yes.
Krishna is out of love with him.
Yes. So it could be that devotee's karma also, which Krishna is releasing, but not necessary. And even if it is that devotee's karma, Krishna can increase it, reduce it, manipulate it, he can do anything. Krishna is in control. In devotee's life, Krishna is in control. That is the point.
Small question. That we were understanding from that purport 9.4.48. So Amrish Maharaj ke bare mein, that Prabhupada says that from the very beginning also this is available. Another time I have heard Srila Prabhupada said that till Nishtha, Krishna, please correct me if I'm wrong, till Nishtha, Krishna doesn't know the devotee much, or he is not bothered about the devotee till Nishtha. So I think that was also in relation to the other Vadasyam Anupranami, for which the Prabhupada says not for new devotees, for some serious devotee only Krishna does that. So am I understanding correctly that how to understand this for very new devotee? I was thinking about let us say young boy.
Okay, see, so basically, personally I have not heard this Nishtha. So you may have to show me some reference to substantial.
I heard from a very senior devotee.
Okay, fine. So whatever it is, definitely Krishna follows the principle of ye yatha mam prapadyante. Okay. That principle Krishna always follows. So to the degree the devotee is serious, to that degree then Krishna reciprocates with him. So if the devotee is not very serious, so when Prabhupada is saying here from the very beginning of devotional service, but at the same time Prabhupada is quoting Sarvadharman Parityaja. In that purport, Prabhupada is quoting Sarvadharman Parityaja also. And then he is saying from the very beginning of devotional service. So that means there should be a good degree of surrender. In our situation, we can practically say that if a devotee is chanting 16 rounds sincerely, following the regulative principles, following the various angas of bhakti, following the instructions of spiritual master, we can consider that to be a serious devotee, for whom Krishna will definitely reciprocate in significant ways. But essentially the principle is ye yatha mam prapadyante. That is the essential principle. So to the degree the devotee is serious, then Krishna also takes the devotee seriously and then reciprocates accordingly. So if the devotee is not very serious, then whatever happens is mostly his karmic reaction. But again the point remains that even then it is orchestrated by Krishna. But Krishna may not bother so much to modify it. But if the devotee is really serious, then yes, then Krishna really thinks about what is for the best benefit of the devotee. So another difference is in the case of a non-devotee, he simply gets his karmic reaction. For how much ever time he is supposed to suffer, he has to get that suffering. But in the case of Krishna, then Krishna gives the suffering till the time the purpose of the suffering is served. So suppose Krishna is giving suffering to a devotee for the devotee to be purified of certain anartha. So as soon as that purpose is served, the anartha is destroyed, or whatever be the reason why he is being put into suffering. When that purpose is served, then the suffering stops. Krishna stops the suffering because the purpose has been served. Unlike the case of a materialistic person, where suffering will go on because it is a karma, that's all. But here, because it is orchestrated by Krishna, therefore, for that particular purpose, he gets the suffering. Once the purpose is served, suffering finished. See? You had already asked. Somebody else had the hand. Okay.
Serious devotees falling away from devotional service. Is it also orchestrated by Krishna?
Do you think Krishna ever wishes a jiva to go away from devotional service? So that is never the will of Krishna. So obviously that is misuse of free will by the jiva himself. So of course, in one sense we can say that Krishna also could orchestrate that in a sense that when a devotee especially commits offenses. So when the devotee commits offenses, then what Krishna does is, he withdraws his mercy. So when Krishna withdraws his mercy, then what happens? He loses taste. He loses taste for devotional service. And then when he loses taste for devotional service, then what else is left? Then out of his own accord, he goes to materialistic life. Nobody needs to tell him, because only two options are available. When there is no taste in devotional service, what he will do? He has to go to materialistic life. So out of his own accord, he goes to materialistic life. Krishna never desires that. But then, because the devotee is creating trouble for other devotees, he is not valuing other devotees who are dear to Krishna, then Krishna pushes him out. Not directly, but indirectly. Yes. Ultimately, that's also Krishna's mercy for his rectification. So that he goes to materialistic life and then he gets purified, learns some good lessons, and then when the disease is cured, then once again he can gradually come. Okay. And I think so that's the last question.
In the text 22, he has graciously come before me. So, you use the word boundless mercy. And then we have giving the cause of
No. So yes, no doubt, a devotee may performing devotional service. Is Krishna obliged to come? Krishna always remains Swarat. So even though, yes, Bhishma Dev is definitely unalloyed pure devotee, but still, it is Krishna's mercy that he is agreed to come. Who can force Krishna? Can anyone force? So therefore, anukampitam, anukampa means mercy. Yes, it is always causeless, because nobody can force Krishna. If one is getting mercy of Krishna, then it is causeless, because Krishna is always Swarat. We can never demand something. It's just like a beggar who goes to a rich man. He can beg. Can he demand? So if the rich man gives, that is always his causeless mercy.
Just like when we understand plan of Krishna and the Anubhava, so do we have any symptoms and devotees of Anubhava, but they are protected by Krishna? It is there under the purview of Krishna's plan.
So you're asking, so what is the proof that a devotee is protected by Krishna?
Any external symptoms?
The protection of the Lord for his devotees is always there. What is the symptom? For a devotee, the symptom is, as we saw in the commentaries, if the devotee is sincere, then Krishna gives these realizations to the devotee, the proper understanding. So even though the devotee goes through difficulties and challenging situations, the protection is offered by the representatives of Krishna, that is the devotees. So when the devotee remains in the association of other sincere devotees, then his devotional service remains protected. That even though a devotee goes through many challenging situations, a sincere devotee is able to always continue his practice of devotional service. And this is what we find. So many devotees we see going through so many challenging situations. But then, what do we find? They are able to continue.
But there are some devotees also who are taking off track, just like he asked.
Yes, so therefore there is a qualification there. What is that? What is that? Sincerity. If the devotee is sincere, then the protection is offered. If the devotee is insincere by his own desire, then what can Krishna do? He wants to misuse his free will, then even Krishna does not interfere with that. And that also, as we discussed, that also is the protection of the Lord. Then he goes off track, he gets some good beatings, and then there's a good possibility of him coming back. And that also has happened to many devotees in our movement. There are enough examples for that also. So therefore, in all cases, we see the protection. Therefore, Kaunteya pratijanihi na me bhakta pranasya.
Thank you.
Okay, one last question. It's okay, it's okay. Anyway, we are not experiencing any of those bhavas now. So it's all right. If you don't understand, it's all right. If you want to understand, you can refer to the Nectar of Devotion, the later chapters of the Nectar of Devotion. Chapters 34, 37. You can refer to those chapters. You can try to understand these things. But these are all referring to ecstatic symptoms on the level of prema. Okay, so all this is referring to the highest stage. Especially when we are talking about these bhavas here, it basically refers to the Lord's reciprocation with his devotees in prema. That is what is being told. The essential point is that the Lord has prema for his devotees, and therefore he reciprocates with them, and therefore he puts them in suffering condition out of his mercy, out of prema. That is the essential point. So even if you don't understand the technicalities, this is the essential point. Okay, fine. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Sorry to disturb your sleep. Okay, chalo, let's go on to the next section from text 25. Okay, text 25. Sutta uvacha yudhishthirastadakarnya shayanam sharapanjare aprichat vividhan dharman rishinam chanushrunvatam. Sutta Goswami said, Maharaj Yudhishthir, after hearing Bhishmadev speak in that appealing tone, asked him in the presence of all the great rishis about the essential principles of various religious duties. So Prabhupada writes, and Maharaj Yudhishthira was inspired by Lord Shri Krishna to ask him of the principles of religion. Lord Shri Krishna inspired Maharaj Yudhishthira to ask Bhishma Dev in the presence of many great sages, indicating thereby that the Lord's devotee like Bhishma Dev, although apparently living as a worldly man, is far superior to many great sages, even Vyasadeva. Okay, so why Krishna orchestrated this plan? Yes, so here Prabhupada is giving some 2-3 reasons why Krishna orchestrated this plan. Always sound in body and mind by dint of spiritual enlightenment, and thus in any circumstances a devotee of the Lord is in perfect order to speak of the right way of life. So the second point is that the devotee, in spite of being in a very precarious condition, painful condition, bed of arrows, not only that, he was also very, as Prabhupada said, aggrieved. But still, his consciousness was perfect. And he was able to speak and give answers to all these various questions of Yudhishthira Maharaj. So just like we see in the case of Srila Prabhupada also, till his last breath practically, what was he doing? Yes, dictating the purports. Till his last breath. So that's how a devotee is always sound in his consciousness, in his mind. And so we find in the case of so many other devotees also, we also see the passing away of His Holiness Bhaktitirtha Swami Maharaj. So how practically till the end he was in wonderful consciousness. So we see so many Vaishnavas leaving their bodies, but it's not that they're miserable, they're totally in a bewildered situation. No, we never find like that. So the devotee is always in sound consciousness. So that's the other point the Lord wanted to show through Bhishma Dev. Yudhishthira also preferred to solve his problematic questions by asking Bhishma Dev rather than ask anyone else present there who was seen to become more famous than himself. The Lord declares very emphatically that worship of his devotee is more. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could have himself spread the movement all over the world. But of course, Prabhupada humbly would say he left some service for me, for us. But we find that that's how the Lord actually wants to glorify his devotee. The Lord is very eager to see that his devotee is glorified. And for the same reason, the Lord orchestrates Yudhishthira Maharaj to come to Bhishma Dev. Text 26. At Maharaj Yudhishthira's inquiry, Bhishma Dev first defined all the classifications of castes and orders of life in terms of the individual's qualifications. Then systematically in twofold divisions described contraction by detachment and interaction by attachment. So of course this teachings of Bhishma Dev is a very big section of Mahabharata, but of course here in the Bhagavatam that is not being focused so much. Here only very briefly Sutta Goswami is describing, and Srila Prabhupada is giving some brief purports to this. But essentially, this is the subject matter that he spoke on. So he spoke on the 4 varnas, 4 ashramas. That was an important topic that he spoke on. And here we find Srila Prabhupada also is describing some aspects of varnashram. So he's speaking about the duties of Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras. He's describing all this. So we won't read all these purports. You can read it yourself. But essentially that is what Prabhupada is describing. And Prabhupada is comparing the Vedic situation with the modern day situation. So just like when Prabhupada is describing the Kshatriyas, okay, we'll read a few important statements. Okay. Anyway, just to complete this discussion on the previous section. Okay, somebody read this. This is from NOD chapter 37.
NOD chapter 37. Krishna exhibited his causeless mercy when he was present at the departure of grandfather Bhishma.
Okay, so here the point comes, causeless mercy. Okay, go ahead.
During the battle of Kurukshetra, Bhishma Dev, the grandfather of Arjun, was laying on the bed of arrow before departing from this mortal world. When Lord Krishna, Maharaj Yudhishthir and other Pandavas approached Bhishma Dev, he was very grateful to Lord Krishna and he addressed the Brahmana, military commander Kripacharya thus, "My dear Kripacharya, just see the wonderful causeless mercy of Lord Krishna. I am most unfortunate. I have no qualification. I was opposing Krishna's most intimate friend, Arjun. I even tried to kill him. I have so many disqualifications. And yet, the Lord is still so kind that He has come to see me at the last point of my life. He is worshipable by all great sages, but still, He is so merciful that He has come to see an abominable person like me."
So that is how a devotee always thinks. So devotee always thinks that I am disqualified, I have no qualification, but it is the Lord's causeless mercy that He is reciprocating. So that is how the devotee thinks, and always is thinking that the Lord's causeless mercy is, or the Lord's mercy is always causeless. Okay, this is from Narad Muni's teachings to Yudhishthira Maharaj. No, sorry, not that one. First canto, 15th chapter. 15th chapter. Okay, the Pandavas retired time. Okay, read.
Everyone's life must be so arranged that the last stage of life, say at least the last 15 to 20 years prior to death, can be absolutely devoted to devotional service of the Lord to attain the highest perfection of life. It is really foolishness to engage oneself all the days of one's life in material enjoyment and fruity activities, because as long as mind remains absorbed in fruity work for material enjoyment, there is no chance of getting out from conditioned life or material bondage.
So, of course, this is from this chapter, Pandavas retired timely. So the Pandavas are showing by the example that how when they had a qualified successor, Maharaj Parikshit, then they initially left. So everyone's life must be so arranged that the last stage of life, 15-20 years prior to death, can be absolutely devoted to the devotional service of the Lord. Okay. So, here in the purport of text 26, Prabhupada is describing some important points which Bhishma Dev spoke to Yudhishthira Maharaj. We'll just read a few important statements from here. So, of course, this also comes in Narad Muni's teachings to Yudhishthira Maharaj in the 7th canto of the Bhagavatam. So you'll find many of these points, similar points over there also. So in the second paragraph, Prabhupada is writing, Bhishma Dev advised for all human beings 9 qualifications. First, not to become angry. Second, not to lie. Third, to equally distribute wealth. Fourth, to forgive. Fifth, to beget children only by one's legitimate wife. Sixth, to be pure in mind and hygienic in body. Seventh, not to be inimical towards anyone. Eighth, to be simple. And ninth, to support servants or subordinates. One cannot be called a civilized person without acquiring the above mentioned preliminary qualities. Okay, so these are qualities for whom? For all civilized human beings. So think about that. So then he's describing Brahmana, Kshatriyas, Vaishya, Shudras. He's describing that. So now further down, Prabhupada writes, an intelligent man abuses his great qualifications if he does not follow the Vedic way of life. This means that he must seriously make a study of the Vedic literatures, especially of the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita. For learning Vedic knowledge, one must approach a person who is 100% engaged in devotional service. He must not do things which are forbidden in the Shastras. A person cannot be a teacher if he drinks or smokes. In the modern system of education, the teacher's academic qualification is taken into consideration without evaluation of his moral life. Therefore, the result of education is misuse of high intelligence in so many ways. Okay, so we were discussing this point many times. The character is what is very important. Nowadays, of course, these things are not seen, and therefore we find so much of chaos. The next paragraph, Prabhupada is talking about the Kshatriyas. Prabhupada says the administrative class must be personally trained in military education. Cowards should not be elevated to the presidential throne by dint of numerical votes only. The monarchs were all chivalrous personalities, and therefore monarchy should be maintained provided the monarch is regularly trained in the occupational duties of the king. In fighting, the king or the president should never return home without being hurt by the enemy. But what is the present day situation? The so-called king of today never visits the warfield. He is very much expert in artificially encouraging the fighting strength in the hope of false national prestige. As soon as the administrative class is turned into a gang of mercantile and laborer men, the whole machinery of government becomes polluted. Then next paragraph he speaks about the Vaishyas, Krishi, Goraksha, Vanijam. So Prabhupada is talking about cow protection. Cow protection means increasing the milk productions, namely curd and butter. And then next paragraph he speaks about the Shudras. Very interesting points. Okay, and then in the last paragraph, the Varnas are, so to speak, classifications of different occupations. And ashram dharma is gradual progress in the path of self-realization. Both are interrelated and one is dependent on the other. The main purpose of ashram dharma is to awaken knowledge and detachment. This is an important paragraph for everyone. The main purpose of ashram dharma means whichever ashram, all the four ashramas. The main purpose is what? Knowledge and to awaken detachment and knowledge. The Brahmacharya ashram is training ground for the prospective candidates. In this ashram it is instructed that this material world is not actually the home of the living being. The conditioned souls under material bondage are prisoners of matter, and therefore self-realization is the ultimate aim of life. The whole system of ashram dharma is a means to detachment. One who fails to assimilate the spirit of detachment is allowed to enter into family life with the same spirit of detachment. Please note that. Therefore, one who attains detachment may at once adopt the fourth order, namely renounced, and thus live on charity only, not to accumulate wealth, but just to keep body and soul together for ultimate realization. Household life is for one who is attached, and the Vanaprastha and Sannyas orders of life are for those who are detached from material life. The Brahmacharya ashram is especially meant for training both the attached and the detached. So that means what? Brahmachari training is required for everyone. That was the Vedic system, correct? Vedic system was everyone went through Brahmachari training. So those who want to become Grihasthas also went through Brahmachari training. So by the Brahmachari training, if one becomes detached, as Prabhupada is saying, if one becomes detached by the Brahmachari training and by hearing, then one can directly go to Sannyas, fourth order. But at the end of the Brahmachari training, if the detachment has not arisen, then for that same purpose, the purpose is still the same. The purpose is what? Detachment. For that same purpose, one enters the Grihastha ashram. So one has to be clear, what is the purpose of Grihastha ashram? The purpose of Grihastha ashram is not simply to enjoy. The purpose of Grihastha ashram is also detachment. So if one does not develop detachment by hearing, then one has to develop detachment by experience. That's a fact. The purpose is the same. So therefore, the ultimate purpose is detachment. Therefore, Grihastha ashram is not a license for unrestricted sense gratification. Correct? So therefore, in Grihastha ashram also, there are rules and regulations for sense gratification. It's no license for unrestricted sense gratification. Then that's not Grihastha life. Then that is what? Then that is Grihavedhi life. So the Grihastha is given sanction only for restricted sense gratification. So therefore, when the Grihastha, he tries to go through this restricted sense gratification, then he thinks better is to give it up totally. That is how he develops detachment. Because when the Grihastha goes through restricted sense gratification, that means what? Very minimal sense gratification. But the result is so many anxieties. That is what happens. So when the Grihastha goes through that, then he thinks better to give this up. So that is what is the purpose of the Grihastha ashram. Ultimately to come to the level of detachment. And therefore the Vedic system is, one should not continue Grihastha life forever. At a certain point, one has to give it up. Panchoshvata vanam vrajit. Then at the age of 50, one should renounce everything. So, therefore, the Brahmachari ashram is training for all classes of people. For both those who are attached and detached. Therefore, in the Vedic system, everyone went through the Brahmachari ashram. It is not that only those who want to become sannyasis go through the Brahmachari ashram. No. Everyone went through the Brahmachari training. So therefore, this is what we have to tell people. Otherwise, sometimes people think that only if one wants to become a sannyasi, he should go through Brahmachari training. No. Brahmachari training is meant for everyone. That training everyone should go through. Otherwise, he cannot become Grihastha. Prabhupada explains this in other places. If one doesn't go through Brahmachari training, he cannot become a good Grihastha. He'll become what? Grihamedi. Because he has not been trained to control the mind and senses. Okay? So, these are important points. Text 27. Dana dharman, raja dharman, moksha dharman, vibhavashah, stri dharman, bhagavad dharman, samasa, vyasa yogataha. So these are the various subjects that Bhishmadev taught Yudhishthira Maharaj. He then explained by divisions, acts of charity, the pragmatic activities of king, activities for salvation, then described duties of women and devotees, both briefly and extensively. So all this is what he taught. Dana dharma, raja dharma, moksha dharma, stri dharma, bhagavad dharma. So all this is what he taught. So again, Prabhupada is describing these various things briefly. So you can read that. Just a second, we'll just finish this section. Okay, 28. Then he described the occupational duties of different orders and statuses of life, citing instances from history, for he was himself well acquainted with the truth. Text 29. While Bhishmadev was describing occupational duties, the sun's course ran into the northern hemisphere. This period is described by mystics, is desired by mystics who die at their will. Vanchitas Uttarayanaha. So now, as Prabhupada writes, the perfect yogis or mystics can leave the material body at their own sweet will at a suitable time and go to a suitable planet designed by them. So that is described in Bhagavad Gita, 8th chapter, 24th verse. So that series of verses is there, where Krishna speaks about two ways of leaving the body, path of light and path of darkness. So therefore, the yogis, the advanced yogis, not all yogis, advanced yogis, then they have the ability to die at will, to give up their body at will. So now Bhishma Dev, he was waiting for this Uttarayan. Of course, Krishna describes in the 8th chapter that if one gives up the body in Uttarayan, then he will not have to come back to this material world. So that was one reason. Of course, here, Bhishma Dev, he could give up his body at will. So he was waiting for this Uttarayan, especially so that he could have sufficient darshan of Krishna. That was his main purpose, why he was specifically waiting for Uttarayan. Otherwise, for Bhishma Dev, this auspicious, inauspicious time, all this does not matter. He is already a pure devotee. There also Prabhupada clarifies the point very clearly in the Bhagavad Gita, that for devotee does not matter, all this auspicious, inauspicious. But here Bhishma Dev is specifically waiting for this time so that he has sufficient opportunity to... Prabhupada writes that towards the end of the purport. He was just waiting for the suitable moment to quit his material body, and the golden opportunity arrived when he was instructing his noble grandsons, the Pandavas. He thus prepared himself to quit his body before the exalted Lord Shri Krishna, the pious Pandavas, and the great sages headed by Bhagavan Vyasa, etc., all great souls. So that was the main purpose why he was waiting for the Uttarayan. Text 30. Thereupon that man who spoke on different subjects with thousands of meanings, and who fought on thousands of battlefields and protected thousands of men, stopped speaking, and being completely freed from all bondage, withdrew his mind from everything else and fixed his wide open eyes upon the original personality of God Shri Krishna, who stood before him four-handed, dressed in yellow garments that glittered and shined. And Prabhupada is quoting the series of verses from Bhagavad Gita 8th chapter, 5th verse to 15th verse. Prabhupada is giving all these translations. But at the beginning of the purport, Prabhupada writes this beautiful statement: the subject matter which attracts the dying man becomes the beginning of his next life. Very beautiful statement. The subject matter which attracts the dying man becomes the beginning of his next life. And the last paragraph. Shri Bhishma Dev attained the perfection of quitting his body at will and was fortunate enough to have Lord Krishna, the object of his attention, personally present at the time of death. He therefore fixed his open eyes upon him. He wanted to see Shri Krishna for a long time out of his spontaneous love for him. Because he was a pure devotee, he had very little to do with the detailed performance of yogic principles. Simple bhakti yoga is enough to bring about perfection. Therefore, the ardent desire of Bhishma Dev was to see the person of Lord Krishna, the most lovable object. And by the grace of the Lord, Shri Bhishma Dev had this opportunity at the last stage of his breathing. Text 31. By pure meditation, looking at Lord Shri Krishna, he at once was freed from all material inauspiciousness and was relieved of all bodily pains caused by the arrow wounds. And thus, all the external activities of his senses at once stopped, and he prayed transcendently to the controller of all living beings while quitting his material body. Please read the purport.
The material body is a gift of the material energy, technically called illusion. Identification with the material body is due to forgetfulness of our eternal relationship with the Lord. For a pure devotee of the Lord, like Bhishmadev, this illusion was at once removed as soon as the Lord arrived. Lord Krishna is like the sun, and the illusory external material energy is like darkness. In the presence of the sun, there is no possibility that darkness can stand. Therefore, just on the arrival of Lord Krishna, all material contamination was completely removed, and Bhishmadeva was thus able to be transcendentally situated by stopping the activities of the impure senses in collaboration with matter. The soul is originally pure, and so also the senses. By material contamination, the senses assume the role of imperfection and impurity. By revival of contact with the Supreme Pure, Lord Krishna, the senses again become freed from material contaminations. Vishmadeva attained all these transcendent conditions prior to his leaving the material body because of the Lord's presence. The Lord is the controller and benefactor of all living beings, that is the verdict of all Vedas. He is the supreme eternity and living entity amongst all the eternal living beings. And He alone provides all the necessities for all kinds of living beings. Thus He provided all facilities to fulfill the transcendental desires of His great devotee Bhishmadev, who prayed as follows.
Okay, so in this way, by having the beautiful darshan of Krishna, he became totally purified. Nivritta sarvendriya vritti vibhramas. Okay, so all his indriyas, they became totally purified by having Vishuddhaya, by having darshan, meditation on the Supreme Lord, and thus he attained perfection. And from the next verse onwards, almost to the end of the chapter, are a series of beautiful prayers which Bhishmadev offers, remembering the Supreme Lord, and that we will discuss in the next class.
So here, Bhishmadev in the 29th shloka, a very nice statement Prabhupada writes in the purport that we read, he was just waiting for the suitable moment to quit. So, and as we were telling that in the 8th chapter, Prabhupada clarifies that for a devotee there is nothing like auspicious and inauspicious time. But then that is for the leaving situation, when we are meant to leave this world. So we should be assured that it will not matter whether what time I leave and all. It's for the yogis and all, they decide, Uttarayan and all. But while we are living and we are practicing, should we, because that is a Pancharatrika Vidhi about what is an auspicious time, what is an inauspicious time. So while we are performing devotional service, so how much should we be careful about, like for example, like for chanting, we don't touch the first finger. Why? Because it's inauspicious for that matter. So for a devotee, while we are living, how much we have to be careful about auspicious, inauspicious, like taking bath or worshipping Lord. Like we follow some vidhis and all.
Yes, so whatever vidhis are there in the Shastras, that's what we follow. Nothing beyond that. So whatever our Acharyas have recommended, for us especially Srila Prabhupada, whatever he has recommended, that is what we need to follow. We don't have to concoct something.
So, yeah, so like I have heard about many other things, like from pujaris and all, like there are many other vidhis also.
Okay, so who has told these many other things?
Mentioned in the Pancharatras.
Okay, in Shastra, so many things are there.
Yeah, so
you see Hari Bhakti Vilas, how many things are there? But Srila Prabhupada has given us what we can follow in the current age. And that is what we are supposed to follow. We don't have to concoct something more than that. We are in Srila Prabhupada's movement, we need to follow what Srila Prabhupada has told us. There is no need to concoct something else. If Srila Prabhupada thought that all those were essential, he would have told, na? Why he didn't tell? So whatever basic things are required for us, He has told that much. See, what is more important is to develop attachment to Krishna by chanting the holy names, the Bhagavad Vidhi. That is more important than all the rules and regulations and the don'ts. More important than that is to develop attraction to Krishna. So in any case, whatever Srila Prabhupada has given us, that much is sufficient for us. Okay? Yes, Prabhu.
Just understanding we already Pandavas and everyone were trained. But now at this last point of time, why this entire systems of charity and livings, religious codes, they were actually Kshatriyas and they have been already even training and things. But why at this point, Bhishmadev, Yudhishthira Maharaj asking this question?
So basically, of course, it is just to clarify everything. And of course, we know that ultimately all this is spoken for the benefit of everyone else. It's not only just for Yudhishthira Maharaj. But Yudhishthira Maharaj is becoming a medium for all these things to be spoken. And then through Yudhishthira Maharaj, then just like Krishna orchestrated the Bhagavad Gita to be spoken, making Arjuna as a medium. So similarly in this case also. Of course, Yudhishthira Maharaj definitely knew all these things. But at the same time, because now apparently he is in a sort of bewildered state after the war. He's sort of disappointed, dejected. So he's in a sort of a little bit bewildered state. So therefore, then Krishna is orchestrating that he goes to Bhishmadeva, and Bhishmadeva speaks all this ultimately for the benefit of everyone. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. You can ask personally. Attendance, please. Aditya Prabhu, Advait Karuna Prabhu, Akshopya Prabhu, Anandasam Prabhu.